Now we're on the guided practice for Pythagorean theorem. The first one, solve for x. We have a right triangle. It's labeled across from your right angle is hypotenuse. And we can use the Pythagorean theorem. The 9 squared plus 40 squared equals x squared. 9 squared is 81. 40 squared is 1,600. And x squared added together gives us 1,681 equaling x squared. We're going to take the square root of both sides. And that gets us 51. So that one is a Pythagorean triple. Because all of the side lengths are whole numbers. Our next one says solve for x, round to the nearest tenth. We have a right triangle. Side across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. Again, that means we can use Pythagorean theorem. 6 squared plus 5 squared equals x squared. 6 squared is 36. 5 squared is 25. And added together, 61. And then we're taking the square root of both sides. Then we get 7.81025. But we're rounding to the nearest tenth. Tenth is the first place after the decimal, so we have 8. Looking at the place afterwards, there's a 1, so we're leaving it as is. So we've got 7.8. These are our approximate value for x. Number 3 says solve for x. We have a right triangle. Side across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. And we are again using Pythagorean theorem. So we've got x squared plus 11 squared equaling 61 squared. Is hypotenuse is always last. So x squared plus 11 squared is 121 equaling 61 squared is 3,721. Subtracting 121 from both sides. We've got x squared equaling 3,600. Taking the square root of both sides. And that means that x equals 60. And all 3 of these numbers are whole numbers. So this is a Pythagorean triple. Our next one says find the variables round to the nearest tenth. So we need the triangle that has the most information, which is the right-hand triangle. And our hypotenuse in that one is 7. So we've got y squared plus 2 squared equaling 7 squared. 2 squared is 4. 7 squared is 49. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. And we have y squared equaling 45. We're going to take the square root of both sides. And the square root of 45 is 6.7082. It says round to the nearest tenth. And tenths place is the first place after the decimal. We have a 0 after that, so it stays put. So y is approximately 6.7. Now, I'm not going to put this rounded number back in and solve for x. I am going to use that square root. Square root also equal y, and that's the square root of 45. And that's our hypotenuse in the second part here. So we've got x squared plus 5 squared equaling the square root of 45 squared. Squared plus 5 squared is 25 equals square root of 45 squared is 45. Subtracting 25 from both sides. And we've got x squared equaling 20. And then we need to take the square root of both sides. And the square root of 20 is 4.47214. But again, we are rounding to the nearest tenth. That's first place after the decimal. So we're looking behind it. At 4, we've got a 7. That means we're raising the score 1. So that means that x is approximately 4.5. Then our last one, again, we want to find the value of the variables. And we need to start with the triangle that has the most information, which is the leftmost triangle. And that means that 13 is our hypotenuse on that one. And that means we've got y squared plus 5 squared equaling 13 squared. Y squared plus 5 squared, which is 25, equals 13 squared, which is 169. Subtracting 25 from both sides. We get y squared equaling 144. And we take the square root of both sides. And we get y equaling 12. Now notice that we have another right triangle here that is marked as congruent to this one. That tells me that this length is also 5. Now, our next one is asking for x. X is actually this whole length. And x is the whole length. But we've got 5 here. So some of you are, sorry, x is not this whole length. X is just the length from here to here. It's the base of the rightmost triangle. Now I can do x plus 5 for the base of the entire right triangle that we're seeing here. Okay, some of you are wondering, well, is she getting a right triangle? What I mean is this triangle here. This Pythagorean theorem only works on right triangles. I can do x plus 5, but that means it's a lot more work. I'm just going to add an extra variable. Makes the question a lot easier. So I'm going to do the z squared plus 12 squared. So that was our height over here, equaling 20 squared. So we've got z squared plus 12 squared is 144, equaling 20 squared, which is 400. Subtracting 144 from both sides. And that gets us z squared equaling 256. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And that gets us 16. So we know that z is 16, but we just want x. Z is this whole length, so we need to take and subtract 5 from 16, and that gets us 11. Make sure you're showing your work, and make sure that when it's asking you to round to the nearest tenth, you're looking at the place after the decimal. That's your tenth spot. Looking in place after that to determine whether you are rounding up or not.